He's going to be talking about Guardians of the Rainforest. Let's give a warm Minnesota welcome to Topher White.
Okay. So, yeah, I think this is really just going to be about a single application of IoT. We're all kind of here because we build things, because we love to build things, because we love to apply them to different problems. This is a problem that was kind of new to me when I started it, but it's just one application. Hopefully, we can all sort of bond over it. So actually, while we're doing this, how many of you would consider yourself builders? How many of you would consider, okay, nice, raise your hands. Nice. How many of you consider yourselves sort of evangelists for IoT? No, maybe all evangelists for IoT. That's why we're here. Well, we can sort of move forward. Basically, audio is a really important part of what we do. This all sort of started for me when I went out to Sumatra. Really, I was there kind of as a tourist. My background is much more in physics and software engineering. But I went out there to volunteer at a Gibbon Reserve. And I had really no interest in getting too much involved in environmentalism at the time. But what we kind of saw was that this Gibbon Reserve, they spent all their time rehabilitating gibbons and releasing them to the wild. It's this large ape. They make the most amazing noises. You could hear it. But they actually were spending about half their money trying to guard the outskirts of this reserve from illegal logging. And one of the issues with that was that they still weren't able to stop it. There were 3 full-time guards who were guarding the area, and still, no matter what, there was this logging taking place. They weren't quite sure where it was. For me being out there, this seemed to me like a pretty ridiculous problem. One day we were walking off into the woods, and within about 5 minutes walk from the ranger station, stumbled upon some people who were cutting a tree down. And the guy who ran the place was just broken, because here he was spending all his resources on trying to stop it. The guards were not corrupt, they were sincere. They just weren't able to hear chainsaws and the rest out of the cacophony of forest, which I hope to share with you a little later. This to me, and probably to everyone in this room, seems like a pretty ridiculous problem. Watching people be walking through forests trying to listen and catch chainsaws, it's a pretty loud noise. It's something computers can pick out pretty well. And so one of the things that sort of, I noticed at the time was that there was, pretty good cell phone service out in the forest, right? There was pretty good cell phone service. There's no electricity, no running water, no roads, none of that stuff. But everyone had a phone. They're all on Facebook and surfing the web, connect. And there's a guy who came by with a generator on a boat once a day, and everyone charged their phones, and they were loving it. I think that's great. Here I am, trying to build these. To be fair, kind of lame apps in Silicon Valley at the time, and we can take these old cell phones that are being discarded and use them to address this problem. So I kind of pitched that idea to them. They were pretty into it. But let's sort of talk about illegal logging in general. Right now, this is obviously using technology to protect the environment, to fight enforcement, to fight illegal activity is nothing new. The way in which this is being done largely right now in the environmental side is with these pretty awesome technologies. You see here, you got satellites, you got drones, you got sort of an IoT application with camera traps. You have these aerial surveys, and then you have these sort of community-based sort of monitoring where someone will go out with their smartphone and report it. These are all pretty effective in a lot of ways, but there's a niche in here which isn't able to stop a logging in real time, right? They're also pretty expensive, and it's sort of an issue. So legal logging has sort of been a continuing issue that. So we're trying to think, what's a real-time system that can use this infrastructure that's there? Because this is all pretty high-tech stuff. But it turns out the rainforest is pretty remote, Although you notice there's cell phone service, high-tech stuff that you build in California or it's in Minnesota or the rest, it doesn't usually just work when you get out there. So you have to come up with something that you can use the infrastructure that's already there. So this is kind of the principle that we started out from. So what was there? Well, there were guards. There were people out there who would stop it. And we're not just like putting a technology out there just for the sake of saying, oh, the problem's getting worse. There are people there who would actually show up and stop it. The rangers, the indigenous folks, the rest. These are ones that would actually be willing to do it if they just knew where it was and they had the incentives to go after it. And as you saw, there's pretty good cell phone service, right? With these two things, I think everyone in this room would say, well, why can't we just put up some detections, IoT devices? And then you have this great system, this very realistic, great animation where like the moment a chainsaw goes off, it picks it up, the sound, it goes to the cloud and sends an alert, and then the rangers get an alert, and they can take off on the motorcycles immediately and show up and stop the guy on the spot. Yes, that's right, highly realistic. But for that you would need some sort of device. So what is there? Well, cell phones For someone like me who has a much more software engineering background, I found myself not really sort of out of my depth when it came to building these sort of embedded devices. But cell phones are actually pretty big computers. They're full of sensors. They work with the cell phone networks that are already there. There's tons of developers around the world that are able to sort of build this stuff already. They're not made for this sort of application necessarily, but they're being thrown away by hundreds of millions every year in the US alone, not counting the rest of the world. And if you just get some solar panels, they can work on a tree canopy, which is a problem we'll talk about later, and a big microphone. You can put these up in trees, they can listen, and they can be the ones that can sort of be the linchpin of that plan that you saw. So this is what I need built. So plastic box with solar panels and a phone inside. And this is me putting one together in my parents' garage back in the day, which was pretty great. Thanks to them for that. Thanks a lot, guys. But basically, you had to test it. It's one thing to build something in California or even Minneapolis. It's another thing to say, oh, it's going to work in the rainforest. So we took it back to Indonesia, the same place where kind of saw this issue, to a different game reserve. Put them up in trees. These guys found some trees for me, which is pretty nice. Put them up in trees. Second day, picked up some illegal chainsaw noises from nearby. And everyone, like I was sitting there, these guys, we put one up, everyone's sitting down, they're smoking cigarettes, and sort of doing their sort of their downtime. And then suddenly I get this email on my phone. It says there's a chainsaw being used. We take off. It's really about a 10-minute run from where we were. We get there, and he's right on the other side of this hill from where the logging was supposed to be taking place. This is me kind of regretting the entire adventure. I'm in the middle of the jungle in Sumatra. He's going, okay, I gotta go. So we gotta go over the hill and interrupt these loggers on the spot. For them, it was actually a very impressive event. They were acquaintances with the people that run the reserve, and the ones who run it were able to use this event to go back to the village and say, look, if you ever walk here again, we're gonna catch you. No one had to be arrested. This real-time intervention in this particular case was extremely effective. Particularly because there was not so much violence involved at that stage. And this sort of came up with the idea that if you can catch someone early enough, the stakes are so much lower. It's lower for the loggers, it's lower for the rangers. If you can stop them before they actually have done much, before the damage is done, there's no need to arrest them, you can turn them away. And it turns out to be a much more impressive event, at least as we saw in Sumatra. And it seemed to work like this in the rest of the world too, with a little bit more trauma. So, again, this is just how it works. This is not cutting edge, data analysis. This is just detecting harmonics. Let's check harmonics of chainsaws out in the forest. This is how we started off. Again, this is at the time was being done on the device. We eventually moved towards actually streaming the audio out of the forest in real time to be able to analyze it in the cloud for a lot more things and to use machine learning and deep learning and all the buzzwords of our current age. But look, let's actually back up a second. So we've all been hearing about saving the rainforest forever. I've been hearing about it since I was a child. I didn't really know what that means. And it turned out the narrative never really changed. It was always how many football fields got destroyed per minute and all the rest. It's all very sort of down and gloomy. It turns out that about half the forest is still left. The rainforest is still there. There's a chance to save it. But at the same time, there's other issues that we hear about much more, like climate change. That we might want to address. But it turns out that deforestation is the second largest contributor to climate change. It puts out more greenhouse gas, more carbon than all the ships, planes, trucks, airplanes combined. All transportation does not add up to the carbon emissions from deforestation. And it turns out that logging is usually the gateway activity. They'll go in on roads, they'll create roads to go extract the valuable lumber due to illegal logging. Well, it turns out that up to 90% of the logging that takes place in the rainforest, of the actual forestry activities in the rainforest, is illegal, according to Interpol. Which means that 17-18% of the emissions on the entire human race come from deforestation. Up to 90% of the gateway activities of all that is from illegal logging. Then, since there's a mandate to stop it, there's local people who would stop it, there's governments who would do it. Fighting illegal logging might actually be the fastest, cheapest, most effective way for us to fight climate change today, without having to change a great deal that would affect the world's population, only actually going after sort of large-scale industrial criminals. So this could be a very effective way to do it. And if it turns out that one device up in the forest, they can listen for audio, which again, audio comes from all directions. You can hear audio pretty far away, especially on a chainsaw. Can actually hear things up to 1 kilometer in the distance, which is 3 square kilometers just from one single device. The amount of carbon that's stored in that forest, it's not logged, is 15,000 tons of CO2. It's equivalent to 3,000 cars off the road for an entire year. So that means that one old piece of trash, cell phone, no one wants to use anymore, up in the forest, with the right level of enforcement that's there, can actually be equivalent to taking 3,000 cars off the road. And you're using what's already there, because the people would stop it, you have the technology and the infrastructure and the cell phone network to support that. This is kind of irresistible, but that's a problem to work on. Because in Silicon Valley, we're always talking about all these ways that we can fight climate change. But if one single ranger, one single guy out in the forest who's going to go stop a logger can have more effect on fighting climate change than 100 engineers at Tesla, and that's true. That's true. That's the language you know. It turns out it's much easier to build an electric car too. And you don't have to blanket the entire area. You can actually get by with far fewer of these things. Just put them on the outskirts. You can actually sort of stop vehicles and trucks as they come in. And that's actually what we were told to work on next. So we got brought out to Africa to a sustainable logging reserve. Let's sort of go through these pilots of it, if that's okay. We were told, look, this is an entire protected area in Africa. There's a lot of illegal logging and poaching taking place there, but it all goes in and out on this one road. Well, turns out the laser pointer doesn't work on a LED screen. Anyway, yes, that one road that you see up and down north-south, that's where all of the illegal logging is coming out of. So our partners there said, look, if you can just detect trucks and motorcycles, we can catch them on their way out. There's one gate. Everything was going out of this one gate. You'd think it would be pretty easy. Everyone was blaming these guys. Everyone was blaming these guys who guard the gate. They were saying, look, these guys are corrupt, they're being paid off. But we'll check on this. So we put these things up. These guys only work in the daytime. No one wants to be in the jungle at nighttime. We were able to show, and again, that all of the sort of traffic was going in and out between 3 and 5 in the morning, because we can put these IoT devices up. They can stream audio. We can detect motorcycles. We can detect trucks and the rest. So we were able to mitigate those guards, and they were able to actually set up an operation to bust a lot of those poachers and loggers that were coming out. This is actually a place that, just you can see the sign that shows all the animals they're protecting, because it's gorillas, it's chimpanzees, it's elephants, and there was some gruesome stuff happening to them being extracted from this land. And these 4 guys were the ones who were being they were both responsible and being blamed for it happening, and they were able to get the support they needed to stop it based on that. IoT is powerful. We just have that data. Logistical data is important. The forensic aspect is really important. And you find a good application, it feels really good. So after Africa, let's talk about Brazil. Talk to you about the Amazon. This is the largest rainforest, right? In Amazon, you can see this ocean deforestation on the edge. But these islands are pretty intact forests. And if you want to be effective, you have to find the right application, the right partner for everything you do. In this case, these are not protected areas in the traditional sense. These are actually indigenous areas. These are lands where the government has said, this is your tribal lands. It's up to you to protect it. This is kind of the Wild West. There's no really law enforcement there, but it's up to them to kind of protect it. And it's shown here that if they have control over it, they can actually keep it pretty well protected. So they might be the fastest, cheapest, most obvious way to protect the Amazon. It's just helping the tribes protect their lands. But let's talk about one tribe, our partner there originally, the Tembe tribe. So down in the south, yes, this is the border of the Tembe tribe. In the south, there's another one you can see that forest is a little more intact. When those guys catch loggers, they strip them down and drag them behind a truck. As a result, they're like, I'm going to go north, and log up north. But the Tembe haven't done that traditionally. And as a result, this is Tembe, nice tribe. But the middle area, this entire area when we showed up in 2014, was controlled by the loggers, by the settlers, by drug cartels. There were growing plantations there. And the Tembe kind of had this cry to a lot of other organizations saying, look, we're kind of on our last legs here. We need to be able to fight them off. We want to. So fortunately for that, this is kind of what they're dealing with. Basically, they'd be driving through their land and they come across 3 or 4 brand new logging trucks filled with wood. It's like in your backyard, essentially, just out massive amounts of stealing resources from them, well armed, and all they can really do is kind of book it out of there as fast as possible. Because you need these sort of warnings to get there. And this kind of happens. Always carry a GoPro on your car. Lesson there as well. But fortunately for this sort of fight, the 10 they decided, and they're pretty well armed. They are organized, and there's about 30 rangers that would go and stop it. But it's a pretty big area. This is like about, I'd say, 120 miles from one side to the other. So you can't just get out there and patrol the whole place. And besides, in real areas, it's dangerous. But there's cell phone service. There's all cell phone towers. This is Brazil. This is the Amazon. There's no police out here, but there's definitely cell phone service. It's pretty Wild West. But even in the Wild West, everyone has a smartphone, essentially. But this is still a little deceptive because even from where you see these dots here on the right or on the left, that's still a good 20 to 30 kilometers from the points where we like to monitor. So what do you do? Well, most of the times when people want to monitor an area or create a cell phone network, they'll build a big tower. But you don't have the budget for that. They don't have the budget for that. Well, we got really tall trees. You don't need a big tower because these trees are 150, 200 feet tall. So you climb trees. And you can start putting up not only these sensors, these devices, but you can also put up repeaters, we'll talk about later. And this is actually, this is a huge part of what we do. And training them to put these things up as well. And it's pretty great for reasons like this. Oh, there we go.
Sit under the tree while it rains away.
Oh, cool.
Down there, about 120 feet up. But pretty amazing thing is that look at signal up there. No, well, that one's not pretty good. Look at the signal up there. We got cell phone service. Thanks to this huge parabolic antenna that we got, which is picking up a signal from about 30 kilometers away here in Brazil, in the Tembe territory. So, feeling pretty good about that. Still a lot of work to do.
Cool. So this is great. It's one thing to say, look, we have to build our own sort of IoT network that can work at great distances. But if you just find the right context for putting them up, you can actually make them much more effective. No one's making a cell phone call from inside that territory. But if you climb a tree, you can surf the web if you want to. So all these tools are usually already there. It's kind of using these tools that are there. And you see this all the time, everywhere. And based on this monitoring we set up, this is a very long project. We're still doing this. I just got back from there yesterday. The 10 were able to stop a few loggers over the past year and turn them away. They captured and burned trucks and did all of their, this is real conflict. I'm not going to sugarcoat it, but at the same time, they are getting the upper hand now, thanks to simple early warning that comes from IoT. And that's just the 10 Look at this. This is the Amazon. That's where all the cell phone towers are, based on data from 3 or 4 years ago. This could be extremely effective, and it turns out, as you might expect, that the places that are most under threat from civilization are also the places that have cell phone service. So it actually tends to be a pretty good vector for change. I'm going to talk about one other. This is the Amazon. Right now, we're mostly focused on Latin America because the best partners, including indigenous tribes, come from there. Other projects. The 10 over there on the right, that white thing is a big thing called the Creek Corridor, which is pretty exciting. But I'm going to talk a little bit about Peru. This is an area totally controlled by legal loggers. The rangers and police were kidnapped when they went in there. But this mountaintop that we're currently sitting on top of has pretty good cell phone service. So we climbed up there, set up a set up a repeater using trees. These cell phone companies actually had set up a repeater there on a tower. People climbed the tower and looted it. So we just put it up a tree. No one knows how to climb trees, so it actually is pretty safe for the past 9 months, including the solar panels. But yeah, we set up a repeater there and we're able to cover that area. And now we're in the process of setting up a lot of monitoring to allow these rangers to catch the trucks and the supplies that are going into the logging settlements as they go in. And so yeah, then this is all about the same idea. It's this real-time monitoring system of when you get, when the chainsaw goes off, the phone picks it up, goes to the API, they get an alert, and it goes back to catch the logger. that's kind of the vision for enforcement. But it turns out that once you show up and stop loggers, especially a couple times, they go away for a season, which is great news. They try and go log somewhere else. But it means that here we are, streaming all this data, this 24/7 monitoring, and what are we going to do with it? You can do so much with it. And so this is kind of, again, these tools. Just the reason I'm talking about this is because I think you all kind of know that data for data's sake isn't enough. It's one thing for us to collect massive amounts of data from industry, from people, from the rest. But if you don't make it available to them, then they wonder what you're using it for. And if you're not coming up with really creative applications and opening that up for people, then you're missing out on really some of the greatest value that can come from there. So these are some of the tools that we use with our rangers to know that. You can sort of see from the bottom that we now also moved into things like biomonitoring. So because we are picking sounds out of the forest, we're able to also build deep learning models and build things that allow people to access these huge troves of data and pick out species, so we can track species through there, which is a much cheaper way of doing it, all with sound. Our partner in Ecuador, they wanted to release this very rare macaw, like a really big bird, which we'll listen to in just a minute. But they didn't want to put tags on it, it was too expensive. But we can sort of just put up half a dozen devices out there. Every time the macaws pass through, they know they're within the territory, because they're able to do that. And then, of course, as I like to show you guys, it's actually pretty cool to see the forest. It's one thing to say it's for scientists, it's for enforcement, it's forensics. Those are obviously very important. But if you really want to protect the forest, you have to build value in the forest itself. And so that value comes from discovering what's there on the ecology side, and actually giving a product that people can connect to. So I think the whole rainforest subject has been kind of stale for a while, but it turns out that when you listen to the forest in real time, and they can send you alerts when an orangutan comes through. When you listen to it in real time, so if I were to say, look, this is a real-time stream from Ecuador right now. It's real, it's real time. It's actually what's happening as we speak. It's a little bit different when you're just watching the video. And it shows it's protected in real time. It shows that there's something's there. And so we're releasing this. This is out there as well. It's another example of applications of using the data in a way that can be effective. And plus, you should all try it because it's pretty cool to listen in. So yeah, that's kind of the idea. And we can send alerts when an animal comes out. So yeah, this whole idea, this real-time stream isn't because there's a satellite uplink or because there's like someone recording it or hiding stuff. It's literally just an old phone that somebody sent to us up in the forest making that work. So again, this didn't come from massive investments in new products. It came from people who were being there. It came from infrastructure that was already there, connectivity, and it came from trash. Some journalist who was very generous wrote about us, and they made up the fact that you could send us your old cell phone, and we put them up in the forest. That was so cool. Now we're getting all these cell phones. Everyone just loves this idea that they have their own old cell phone in their drawer, and they can send it in. So yeah, always lean on journalists for the best ideas on how to run your business. And it works. These are old Android phones we put up, and the phones that we can't use, because again, it takes a lot to get them on trees. We give them to the rangers, so they get a sort of extra boost from that. So use what's already there. That's kind of the mantra that we already have, because it allows a pretty small group of people operating over a very large distance to build stuff, because there's technological detritus in the phones. There's huge amounts of amazing infrastructure that we place first. Whoa, hold on a second. There's a macaw just doing this whole thing. Okay. Yeah, it's already there. That's the mantra that we sort of try and go for with IoT. Cool. That's me. I'd love to ask questions.
How do you get funding?
Oh yeah, hey, that's a great question. Which I will ask back to a lot of you as well. How do we get funding? We're 501c3, which is actually a debatable strategy in Silicon Valley. We hear about that a lot. But we do fundraising for grants. People really they don't want to help develop the technology itself. People want to be funding something that's already developed. And so we try and subsidize the development of this with grants that get us into new locations, and also some very nice investors donors. But that's where it's going to be super important for us to develop things like the thing for colleges, like the app like this, is you have to be able to use the data, this massive amount of data that you have to earn everything to drive the rest of it. And I think that's the only way we're really going to save the forest. You can't save the forest by just doing the same old thing we had before, stopping people from doing one thing. You have to build value in what's there. And the truth is that what we pay attention to in America, in the West, is what matters to the rest of the world. So we have to create a way through this app and through the rest that people care about the forest. And if those eyes are on it, that's the point where it becomes more valuable to the people there, if that makes sense. That's what we're trying to do. Which is why you should all download the app. There it is. How many of you guys work in IoT for industry? Just out of curiosity. Okay, cool. Any sort of IoT for sort of environmental monitoring? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Actually, 2:15. I'm doing a talk on sensors in the environment. So
Awesome. Thank you.
Question for you actually about microphone sensitivity.
Yeah.
So are you using external mics on these? And if so, you're giving a general radius of 3 kilometers. I was just wondering, since you're dealing with different sorts of sounds and in different environments, is there any way that you can use higher frequencies in that mic or lower frequencies to try and further than 3 kilometers and increase your radius?
It's not even 3 kilometers, that's a great question. It's only 1 kilometer, actually, that they can hear, and that's only for chainsaws. So vehicles are much less. We try and tend to rely upon the analysis side of things, less than sensitivity of the phones. Because if you have a higher sensitivity microphone, you just pick up the loud coughing of the forest like that much more. So we try and rely on deep learning models to do that. But I'd love to put our heads together on this. We could definitely filter out some of the sound, but since it's not just chainsaws or vehicles we're looking for, we're trying to capture this whole audio arc of everything that's happening in these places all the time. We have been sort of trying to just capture, get it all in instead of being focused on one thing. But hey, I got something. I'll be around. I'm not sure quite where the hands-on part is, but yeah, let's all tear these things apart and put together.
If I caught that correctly, it sounds like early models used local processing, you were egressing events, and now you're streaming all the data out to the cloud, so you can presumably apply much more analytical to it. And it's really cool app, which I just installed. But can you speak more to the decision model between local processing at the edge versus the cost of carriage to egress the data and then the value that comes with being able to apply more processing?
Oh, thank you so much for that. I did not plan to in the audience, I promise. Okay, so I love that question because it's one of the ones where we hear so much that we're doing it wrong. Can you repeat the question? Yes, so the question, correct me if I'm wrong, was why are we doing the processing on the device itself? Why are we streaming the audio to the cloud and doing the processing there? I mean, there's advantages to both, but essentially, what's our strategy there? The idea behind that was that that change, because again, we did make that change from the beginning, was that we wanted to be able to improve our analysis and reanalyze old data. It's really hard to get to these places. We wanted to be able to get the data out in a fashion that was helpful, and also I sort of feel like there's trade-offs to this, right? When you're streaming data out all the time versus processing it on there, you have to generate a lot more power. We're talking a lot more power. You're just doing it on the device, transmitting it 20, 30 kilometers is a big deal. So for us, that's a big trade-off. But I think it's worth it for us because the networks are going to get better. It's going to make it easier and easier to get these things out, and we're always going to have this audio arc, this like, sort of Noah's Ark of audio that's coming out that we can analyze for all sorts of stuff that we're not looking for now. And it turns out that these things eventually should be pretty cheap. We shouldn't have to be able to look at them. People should put these things out themselves, and all that data should be able to come in. And so for ecologists, if you want to look for a new species in the Amazon, it used to be you had to get a grant and do a design experiment and go down there and spend spend 6 months recording and bring it back on a hard drive and analyze it yourself. Now we can say, look, if you're an ecologist, you want to look for a parrot, you can analyze 18 months of data across 100 locations in less than an hour by building a model on our system. And that's actually how we protect the forest. That's what we want. It's that raw data that's super important. So it is, I think, a bit of a debate in the IoT community about less data versus more, and sort of edge processing versus not. But in our case, I find advantages in us being like the only ones who are trying our best to transmit hundreds of megabytes of data a day out of the Amazon, which also is kind of a cross to bear. Does that make sense? Does that help?
Absolutely.
Cool. Thanks.
You had the issue about the old-fashioned logging of the doing. I would be very innovative here, but I would also innovate it over on their end too. So have you had any issues with them doing just old-fashioned logging? And if so, is that something that I can also detect with your?
Yeah, it's possible. So I guess the old-fashioned logging, then that you mean sort of by hand, not with chainsaws. It's one of the reasons that we know it can't be really effective in India right now, because most of the logging takes place there is by hand. Some people have also come up with really creative ways that they could that our stuff could be circumvented by like putting silencers or inventing like an electric chainsaw. And as far as I'm concerned, that would be so cool if somebody actually made a change to what they were doing based on what we're up to, and it hasn't happened yet. But that would be like the definition of disruptive. If we can make them change anything about what they're doing, and not just going out there and taking massive amounts of wood, that would be an improvement. And plus, I feel like we're kind of on the edge of that. Does that answer your question? And so far, the only time anyone's ever stolen or taken one of these devices or found them was in Africa. These Pygmy Baka tribe, they went and climbed a tree and got one down and took it back to the village and tracked its location and heard them talking about it, and then eventually went and turned it into, they sold it in the village and it got back. So, and we put them much higher now, but it's actually kind of cool to see it. Yeah.
All right, two quick questions. One about bandwidth, how do you deal with all the bandwidth devices? You know, it's the problem that a lot of us are facing. And two, you guys open source any of your software?
Thanks. So the question is on how do we deal with the data bandwidth and getting out of there, and how do we are we open sourcing? Everything we do is open source. It's all on GitHub. Go to this rcx.org website and check it out. And we're hopefully releasing deep learning models on GitHub as well. We basically feel that we are moving too slow. We always try to move fast, but we're always moving too slow. If someone else wants to use this for the application, you're welcome to, because you'll make it better. How do we deal with getting data out of the forest? Yeah, each device can send anywhere from 150 to 200 megabytes of data per day, but that's over 24 hours, which actually equates to a pretty low data rate of less than 2 kilobytes a second. And it turns out that when you use old phones, you can hack them in all sorts of creative ways. So pay-as-you-go plans are pretty great. They're always trying to get people out in the middle of nowhere to use the web. And so they'll have promos like, if you enter this code, you get 24 hours of data, for 200 megabytes of data for 24 hours for the cheap price of like 5 cents. So the phone pretend to be a person after midnight. They start up and they enter in that code, and then, a couple seconds after midnight, and then we get a pretty cheap data rate out in the middle of the forest. We have to keep track of those codes, but luckily it's a way to run this at really like a tenth the cost out in the middle of the forest.
How do you protect these phones or the devices from weather and wildlife? And what's the lifespan? Like, have you had to replace them since you set them up?
Yeah, well, so we're still building these things. Next, the question was how to protect them from the elements, which is a big issue. It's pretty wet in Rainforest, we really thought, and it gets pretty hot. And the phones themselves, transmitting 24/7, get pretty hot. They can go anywhere from 30 to 50 degrees Celsius based on the time of day. So how to protect it from elements? We just use a big plastic box. You'll see some of them. It's not very creative, which is why they look the way they do. But we're open to all sorts of different ways. Eventually, we want to make it so simple that you can just put a phone in a Ziploc bag, nail it to a tree with maybe some solar panels, and like that's enough. That's the way we can protect the forest, not like us building the hardware. Does that answer your question? Cool. Thanks.
Have you thought about using? I'm wondering if there's any low frequency sound that are transmitted a lot further than train sources, especially when you're logging trucks that weigh tens of tons and moving over things, and if they get transmitted far enough, would there be the possibility of triangulation then?
Oh, yeah. A good question. So low frequency is really the only thing that propagates through the forest, to be honest. And so that's why elephants, they actually talk to each other. Forest elephants talk to each other at like 10 hertz and below. So it's these low frequencies that really actually go through forest there. So we have only really a sort of dictionary of maybe about 10 different things we're listening for right now, but all the data is right there. It's easier for us to record lower frequency data. That's a lower sample rate, that's a lower amount of data. It's the higher frequency stuff like bats that are harder. So there's a treasure trove of data there now. Anyone who wants to look for things that are low frequency, this data is all open, the API is open. We just want to make these things available to people. And anyone who has experience with that, please talk to me, because we don't want to build like a full-on interface thinking that people are going to use it. We want to build the basic tools for other people to build these third-party applications. Does that make sense? Thank you. Cool. Thanks a lot, you guys. Thanks a lot for
So the reason I want to start here is that even though a lot of you guys know home control existed for a long time, it really didn't come until the smartphone really started coming onto the scene in large numbers when and created a new interface for people via an app to give your average consumer a way to control things. And so the iPhone came out like this year. There's a big year, 10 years where the iPhone came out in 2007. And it's really about 5 years ago when the smartphone adoption in the US started to reach this inflection point where there are actually 100 million people with smartphones in their pockets. And with that, allowed the industry to do is now you have this large base of people who are looking to do more with this, basically computer in their pocket than just check stocks and play Angry Birds. And so that kind of laid the foundation for the category to come up. And of course, I'd be remiss not to start, with the Nest thermostat. Probably a few of you guys have it in their home. Probably most of you have seen this device. But the reason I want to start here is because, in my view, is that with the modern era of IoT started with the Nest thermostat. And probably a few of you guys have heard the story of how the company got started. So Tony Fadell, he was the chief collaborator of Steve Jobs at Apple. He was responsible for designing like the first 14 generations of iPod, the first 4 generations of iPhone, and he was leaving Apple, and he was building his own home. And of course, as he was looking for all the fine things to put in his, tech-enabled amazing house, he got into the heating and cooling system and looked at the thermostat and the ugly thing that wasn't his wall. And all of a sudden he started thinking, well, hey, I can do better. And he really created the company Nest Labs around that concept and revolutionized the device that really did not get touched for more than 100 years. And the thing about Nest thermostat, though, even though it's put out as, hey, this is like the big successful, it was took off right away. It's actually not true. The device struggled in the very first couple of years after it came out in 2011, and a lot of it had to do with the messaging and how the device was marketed. Because the messaging for the device was save energy, and that really did not resonate with the mass consumer at that point. Now, people were still buying it, but the people who were buying it were techies, people who, and the tinkers, people who just like, hey, cool gadgets. And so the device didn't really start to take off until they changed that message. And they changed it from save energy to save money. And that very fine nuance, even though it's basically, you're still doing the same thing, you're saving money by saving energy, that message started resonating with the consumer. And the device took off. And of course, it's a beautiful piece of technology inside and out. There's a lot of tech in it. Had some early machine learning in there as well. And but another key part that was, first of all, was a good piece of hardware and software. Was well designed. It had a good message. It basically pays for itself over time. And another key factor of this smart home piece of technology that was really differentiator at the time was that it was really easy to install. So you think about it, most people are really not comfortable touching, like opening up walls and taking things off the walls and with wires. Like whenever you have wires, electricity, you're like, oh, not me, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to call somebody and do that for me. And here, and actually, this device is very easy to install. And in fact, according to Nest, 85% of their consumers install the Nest thermostat themselves under 30 minutes. So again, you combine great device, pays for itself, and easy to install. And to this day, when I meet with new companies that come and pitch ideas for to come into the Best Buy assortment, Nest thermostat is still kind of put up as this kind of golden standard of what a great IoT product should be. And so, along with that, at the same time as you have this great device, okay, is this better, or can everybody hear me? Okay, okay, great. At the same time, you have this concept, right? You have this new sensors, connectivity. Again, everybody's trying to play into the same base of smartphones. But the thing here is that just because you can connect it doesn't mean you should. And it was a big trend that was going on. Still does. Some things that are getting connected. I just threw, not to pick on anybody, but I did throw just a few pictures on here of, connected, mattress, teapots, washing machines, mirrors. You're like, why would somebody need to connect a mirror? Good question. I don't know the answer to that. Right? But you have all these things that are all of a sudden starting to get connected. And how I think of those devices is that they're really solutions in search of a problem. Because just because you're connecting things, you're not necessarily making it better. And and if you think about, okay, well, now that it's connected, it means that, maybe I can get some incremental benefit, but the thing that, the calculation that a customer goes through, right, just like, you and I go to the store and figure out, hey, whether something is worth spending money on, is that, hey, is that incremental benefit that this now new feature of connectivity going to deliver worth the extra, the connectivity premium? So is it worth paying an extra $50, $100 or more to have that product connected and do something? And again, the idea here is that not everything that should be, that just because it can be connected doesn't mean it should. And so you have a lot of these products in the market that really flooded the market and created a lot of noise. You've probably seen some late night TV shows, and you have these founders coming out teaching like, hey, this great idea or that. It created a lot of buzz for the category, but there was really not a whole lot of consumer take rate on this. And at the same time, you have kind of on the opposite end of the spectrum. You have some really great standalone devices that actually address real consumer needs, or these companies saw an opportunity to deliver a benefit that was simply not possible before until the connectivity existed there. And so I'll briefly go through these kind of three products that have really come, at least in the early in the early stages of the industry. About 5 years ago, after Nest began to represent the category and really accounted for the bulk of sales and the revenue in the category as well. And so first you have DropCam, and the idea there was very simple, right? Greg Duffy had this idea that, hey, a great camera that's super easy to install can be a very good do-it-yourself security solution. And the key thing for this guy, again, just like with the Nest thermostat, you can install under 30 minutes, but there's wires and all that. DropCam, you can install under 3 minutes. So they created a great product. It was a single product, so it was very easy to get to market. So the market message is very clean and simple, and it worked really well. And first, it spread by word of mouth. They also had a great go-to-market strategy with the regional radio advertising buys that they were doing. And so the thing spread like wildfire and became the most successful IP camera, even though at that point IP cameras already existed for 10, 15 years by the time DropCam came out. But again, they're very, there was port forwarding, they were very difficult to set up, and again, something just that an average consumer just could not do. The second product is the Wemo Switch, and so Belkin is the maker of that product. And Belkin was a very early deliver in IoT, and specifically the higher, the leadership, the executive leadership, and they really believed in the ability of connected products to really kind of transform how the way consumers interact with technology, and how they can deliver this kind of benefit by making very simple things. So again, switch, you're familiar, right? Just plug it in and plug it in anything into it, and you can control it. Right? Very simple. And the way Rainforest came to being in this business is that they have this large accessory business. They do a lot of kind of power management tools, so they have cables. Now they're into cases for smartphones and such things. But their other core competency is networking. And so they use their networking prowess to figure out, okay, how do we make it super cheap, to make this device connected and deliver benefit to the consumer. And then finally, the last example I have in here is Philips Hue. And Philips, again, built on their core competency of knowing how light, not just like core competency of building light bulbs and light fixtures, which they're one of the biggest producers of manufacturers of lighting in the world. They really took this idea of and knowledge of how light can transform places and actually change the way people feel. And so they really came up with this concept of light beyond illumination. And that was very new and something that, again, was not really possible before you had this connectivity. So again, using one light source to be able to deliver the right light for the moment, without kind of having to change the light bulb every time you want something different out of it. And so, as all of these devices were coming out, you also have companies that were kind of some brand new companies and some companies that existed, like retailers like Lowe's, that figured out, hey, we want a piece of the pie. And so there were a couple of different approaches there, and all the companies here, they tried to say, okay, we want to be that hub of the home, because they saw this kind of this future problem and tried to address it head on. In that, hey, consumers are going to have all these devices, right? They're just devices I talked about so far. Four devices, 4 apps. People are going to be frustrated with all these apps. They're going to want to consolidate control. And they're going to want to have this kind of super app or hub to control all the devices and make it really easy. And so, these companies, kind of went after that concept of big company. How do we position ourselves at the center of the home and make it really easy for consumers through that problem? And first, there were really 2 main approaches, and then there was Nest, which I'll touch on separately at the end here. But one approach, kind of have logos of Insteon and Lowe's by Iris by Lowe's, is that these companies said, okay, we are going to build as many devices ourselves as possible, so that consumers don't need to go anywhere but us. Right, we're going to provide the switches, the thermostats, the cameras, and they're going to only need our one app. And the problem with that was that it's really, really difficult for a single company to build a lot of products that consumers actually desire. And so what these companies ended up doing is that they used a lot of off-the-shelf components. They had, to a varying degree, but speed to market. But for the most part, they kind of took these solutions. They built a bunch of products that not a whole lot of people wanted, because a lot of times, again, they took these, some of these designs that didn't even change those, tweak them a little bit and put them up. And so, the demand was not really there. And again, because for the large part, nobody wanted the end devices that they were enabling, even though there was this one app to control them all. And then you have the second set of companies here, and the other common approach was, okay, making some of these devices, there are maybe simple or again maybe the most common denominators, and then really leveraging integrations as a way to positioning yourself as the hub or kind of the super app for the whole. And what these companies, and again, some examples include Wing, Smart Things, homegrown brand right here in Minneapolis. Subsequently acquired by Samsung. And Staples Connect are just some examples here where these brands built some devices themselves, but really went after these integrations. And they created this really arms race of who can make the most integrations. And we can have a kind of side chat about who we think won that war. But at the end of the day, those companies did not have a lot of success beyond the early adopter, because the average consumer did not understand the value of a hub. And all these companies still, at the core of them, they needed that hub device that had multiple radios to connect to other devices. But the thing is, some of the more meaningful devices out there, they were already gaining traction with consumers like Philips Hue, like Wimo, like Nest. Integrating with those companies proved rather difficult in a meaningful way. And so you needed to go after API integrations there. And although, again, some of these companies had better integrations than others, ultimately the consumers didn't get it. And the reason that I believe that one of the reasons that these companies did not succeed beyond kind of the early adopters, and there's still a lot of early adopters, but didn't kind of penetrate into the early majority from a consumer adoption curve, is because at that point there were simply not enough consumers that had enough devices that had multiple apps that was really a problem. Again, it was an issue for kind of the early adopters and techies, and kind of beyond that, not a whole lot of people. And then on the other end of the spectrum, you have Nest, and Nest really kind of focused on these kind of what they call thoughtful one-to-one integration. So it was a lot of work for them because for each integration, all of them were API integrations, and they thought, okay, well, here's this device. What is the one or two use cases that we can enable with this device when we connect with it? And it was kind of really this kind of hand-to-hand combat of integrations that you have to be extremely thoughtful. And what it up is, it was a very curated way of integrating. They were really thoughtful use cases, but I'll give you an example for one of them is of such integration. For example, if my Nest thermostat is in the away mode, my whirlpool dryer or washing machine, right, is going to keep tumbling close so it doesn't get wrinkled. Okay, very thoughtful, but again, probably not a use case that people are really going to be like, oh my God, I must have that because that's totally a problem that I have every day in my life, right? Talk about first world problems. And so again, the take rate on that was not right. Now, to these days, if you go to workswithnest.com page, it has dozens upon dozens of integrations, and to this day they still manage a lot of that, and again, they still haven't changed their approach. Now, in the most recent past, a lot of that Works with Nest team now has gone over to Google, and they're working on a lot of the Google Home integrations. So they're so that's where the internal management is doing some repositioning there. But for the most part, this was kind of the multitude of the approaches. And now we get to the voice system. Now, if we get a little audience participation here, okay, how many have one or more of these in their home? Alexa or Google Home? Awesome, you're talking to the right people. All right, very good. And it's really, up until the voice system got here, and again, it's positioned as a voice-activated speaker, right? It's super easy to listen to music, maybe set timers and alarms, ask for the weather, it's another common thing. But actually the next thing, most common thing that people do with Alexa is control their smart home devices. And what happened when Echo came onto the scene is that it, kind of very naturally positioned itself as the de facto hub for the home. And again, if you look at the beginning of the device launch, it really didn't control any smart home devices, right? So if you think back to 2 years ago when the device first launched, it really didn't have any product integrations. All it could do is answer some very simple questions. I don't think they even had the Wikipedia integration when they launched. It was really all about music services and timers, alarms, and weather. But what happened, and the reason that the Echo really was this booster pack on the smart home adoption engine is because it made this, for a really intuitive interface for consumers, right? So you think about, earlier I talked about, okay, what is that incremental benefit of me, having an app to control something in my home, to turn something on or off, right? If you compare again the two experiences, on one side, say it's something simple like turning on the lights. You have, okay, I want to turn on this light right here, so okay, where's my phone? My phone's right here. Let's see, my password is this. I find the right app, I wait for the app to load, and I find the right set of lights, and yes, I got my lights turned on, right? It's much easier to just walk out and flip the darn switch. And now you have with Alexa, just very easily be able to solve that problem, like, hey, Alexa, turn on the lights, and it's done, right? It's flawless. And, again, it's a delightful experience with Alexa. And what we're kind of finding with our consumers is that after they get the voice system in their home, and they experience some of those, very easy things to do, like music and weather, they're very quickly looking for other things to do with their assistant. So it's kind of has been this kind of booster for a smart home adoption. And so if we look at where we're at in terms of household penetration, right? So it's where to saying how many people actually have these things in their home. So I believe that prior to holiday, about 10% of U.S. consumers actually had some kind of smart home device in their home. So and the part of that, and then there was this huge acceleration of adoption during holiday. A lot of it was driven by voice assistants, and what that has done is it drove adoption of other devices. Not just lighting was certainly a big one of them, but certainly things like thermostats and even cameras. Because again, once a customer has a delightful experience with one smart home product, they're looking for other things to do in their home. And so, we're kind of at the stage in a smart home space where we're we're way past the innovators, and we're basically kind of done with the early adopters. And you now have kind of entering into this kind of early majority, where you have folks that are not as tech forward, not as tech savvy. They still like tech and they like it in their lives, but they need kind of a lot of help in figuring out, okay, where do I start, and what's the interesting device for me to get started with. What that really means is that we're now dealing with kind of two different types of customers. That probably a lot of you, I would assume a lot of you folks are kind of on the right side of the screen there, right? Having multiple devices now, and I think, all right, what am I going to do next? What this issue kind of poses a very interesting challenge for us as retailers, right? So we're Best Buy because we have to serve both of these customers, but we only have one set of assets to do that. So on one side, you have again kind of the customer on the left who's just thinking about their first device. And they're certainly looking to get inspired, right? They're not as easily convinced that, hey, this is the tech that you must buy, and they definitely need some help. They also trying to figure out, maybe okay, what's going to deliver the most benefit for my family and not just for me. For these customers, right? Our goal as Best Buy, right, is help them, okay, select and install and use a product that they love. And at the same time, you have this other customer who is onto their third, fourth, fifth device, and that's actually the customer that is finally ready to get open to a solution like a hub to be able to consolidate control. And those customers are now looking for a little bit more sophisticated use cases to bring to their home. So a lot of some things that we were talking about in the sessions earlier. About things that, okay, how do I connect these devices now? For them is now a real concern, right? Juggling multiple apps and figuring out how does the whole family get great use out of these devices. And so, this is, kind of how we got here so far, and so now what's going to happen? This is not for me. Again, trying to predict the future in any way of imagination, but simply just to touch on some trends here that we are already seeing, and a lot of you probably already know, but I'm just going to try to, sum up. Hopefully, more of you than not can get this reference. I see some smiles. Thank you. That makes me happy. This is Highlander for those of you who don't remember the movie. But but my point here was that there's this big phrase: there can be only one. There will be only one. There will not be only one. There's this kind of this war of, okay, who is going to be that one platform? And a lot of consumers are still sitting on the sidelines thinking, all right, I'm going to wait until they figure that stuff out and everything works with everything else. Guess what? I have bad news for you. It's not going to happen for a long, long time. And that's because if you look at the players that are competing in the space, and the amount of potential that this market represents, the market is just too big and the stakes are too high, and folks that are competing in the space are simply too powerful in their own right to just let go of this opportunity. And so you're going to see companies like Apple, like Amazon, like Google, like Samsung, continue to fight it out in the space and figure out, how do they position themselves as kind of that you could call it the center hub, but really position them to win with the consumer in the space, and to make sure that they're participating in this marketplace. There's not going to be just one platform, which was, again, probably this question was very common maybe 12 to 18 months ago. I think some people are still trying to answer the question, okay, what's going to be the one platform, what should I buy? A lot of people get asking my friends, people at work, and I'm just saying that it's not going to happen for a long time. That's why I wanted to start with this one. The other point I want to make is the importance of partnerships in this space. And the point I want to hit here is when two or more things connect each other, it makes it from a partnership perspective, it makes it a lot more difficult for someone new to come in and disrupt that partnership. And so and I can tell you today, a lot of your kind of top devices and solution providers in the space are putting partnerships at the absolute center of how they're going to compete and how they're going to fend off the competition. But what you also see is more thoughtful partnerships and more thoughtful integrations that are done better. And what I mean by that is, when two or more things connect with each other, they don't break, right? They don't make each other, they don't make each other weaker. They actually make each other that much better and deliver that incremental benefit to the consumer. The other point is, and again, we've already hit on this kind of theme with Alexa and the voice assistant and Google Home, but really kind of thinking of this kind of voice control as, what we call a horizontal value proposition, right? So you already have this, on your phone, on your computer, on your home, in your home, in your car, and so now it's going to get into more places in your home, right? It's going to penetrate a lot more cars. But it's not just going to be kind of standalone Alexa-enabled or Google-enabled speakers, right? So what's going to happen is that you're going to see voice control embedded into a lot more devices. And what that's going to do is that it's going to give consumers a lot of choice in actually how they want to use voice in their home, and also what form they want it to come in. So there's going to be a lot of innovation there. Machine learning, of course, is a big, I think it's actually like the #1 buzzword of 2016. Of course, it existed, I mentioned, Nest thermostat was actually the first kind of real consumer device, consumer electronics device certainly, that used, some of the machine learning algorithms to learn about, the consumer's home, learn about, the temperatures that they like, and kind of adjust to their preference, and figure out what is that right balance between saving energy and increasing comfort, right? So the device always, tries to balance those two goals. But the big thing about machine learning and what it's going to enable is personalization. Think of, something like, face recognition technology in your security camera, in the home. So, the panelists here, sales talked about, computer vision and security cameras on the streets. Well, in the home, it enables a whole different use case, right? So if you think about, the notification that you get today from, most security cameras is, there is motion in your living room, right? Activity detected. Okay, well, that's ambiguous. Thanks. That helps me a lot, right? And if you see some of the companies already on the market today, switching to, imagine that same notification being your daughter came home from school, right? And so that's something that is going to be enabled by machine learning, because the camera that comes out of the box or whatever device doesn't know you or your family, and so the algorithms have to be in place to make sure that you teach the device to be more useful, to you. This one is almost like self-evident truth. I could probably skip over the slide, but the one big point here is it's in CE, everything's getting cheaper, everything's getting more affordable. But the one thing I want to point out here is what the lower prices are going to enable are new use cases that probably we have not thought of before, right? And what that's going to do is going to spur innovation. And so because of the price of the components, you're now going to be able to put more sensors, do a lot more things. They're going to be better, more accurate, right? And again, just don't go out there and connect stupid things, right? But there's going to be connectivity in things that probably need connectivity, enable things like diagnostics for the appliances in the home, and be able to tell you up front before, hey, your refrigerator is about to die, would you like to call technician, all right, or deploy one right away. So it's going to enable new types of use cases. And finally, the last thing, right, is better security is on the way. I can tell you that from my conversations with top, security was a big topic today, and it's absolutely spot on. From my conversations with some of the top brands today, app security is at the front and center of the top providers in the space today. It is a huge concern. But we also know that security flaws are inevitable, and there will be breaches here and there. So for companies, it's important not just to think about how do you put security at the center of your value proposition, but also what is the plan when things don't go right, because they will go wrong and something will happen. So what is the plan for you to deploy that patch and make sure that that you're on the way to to a better to a better outcome. And while kind of those kind of larger breaches, security breaches that we all hear on the evening news, right, and they scare a lot of consumers. And how we think about them is they're kind of bumps on the road. All right, there's this bump. People are like wait, what's going to happen now? And then it kind of eases really quick, and then people kind of get over that. They understand that hey, it's going to be fine, and they get built up their confidence in the technology again, and then continue to adopt smart home products and services. And that's all I got. Thank you. Would love to open up for questions if you guys have any.
Thanks for the presentation. It was good. As you're moving to the right and away from less sophisticated technology customers, are you having to spend more time training them and helping them install things? And if so, how do you do that?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for the question. So yes, we're doing multiple things, and so for us, we're trying to position ourselves as a kind of omni-channel retailer, right? So retail is kind of what we're doing. So our core job is to be that agnostic friend to the consumer, and help them understand what is the right technology for them. So we do it with assets in the store. We're actually doing in the middle of doing some merchandising work there that will help consumers navigate the space better and help them understand kind of what's in front of them. Certainly training for our blue shirts, right? Our Rainforest in the stores is a big point of that. Because getting them better trained is another thing. Making sure that the stores are correctly staffed, but also online, right? So we are building new tools online to help consumers, enter the space. But we're not trying to dictate that, hey, here's how you must choose. Here's how you must choose your path. And at some point, because consumers have to do it to move along. But we are able to. So, for example, if you're looking for things to work with Alexa or Google Home, you can choose that path and explore that first. Or if you're in security or lighting, kind of go down that path, and we'll help you figure out the best solution.
So my question is, as these devices become easier to use and maybe more delightful for consumers, they also seem to also implicitly rely on a cloud connection. So for example, that first generation Dropcam, when Dropcam decided to stop supporting on their server, those Dropcams stopped working. When Revolve was bought by Google Home, all their devices stopped working. So it doesn't seem like there's a lot of consumer pressure on OEMs to preserve some kind of limited functionality or basic functionality when the cloud goes away or when the company goes away. what kind of discussion is Best Buy having with, for example, Smart Things or any of the other smart home device OEMs?
Yeah, that's a great question. Thank you. Whenever we talk with a, whether it's an existing partner or a new manufacturer that's coming into the space, what we're trying to understand is kind of what is their service model, and how do they intend to serve their customer in the long term. And what we see is that there's kind of a split of, and for the most part, people tend to lean on this kind of freemium model, right? So, but the key thing there is that companies have to do a better job of helping consumers understand what is the functionality of the device that is going to be there for them kind of for the lifetime of owning the product, and what are the features that are kind of incremental that you pay for. And and companies have different strategies, and some will certainly rely on a lot of cloud data processing versus the local processing to enable some of that kind of interactivity, just get kind of some of that basic functionality. But I can tell you that especially early on, some companies basically said, hey, we have local control, or if your Wi-Fi goes down, if your Comcast connection is out, or whatever your service provider, that will still work. So what I would say is, it's always an ongoing discussion. When it comes to acquisitions of companies, right? So I think like Revolve is probably another good example, right? So when NASDAQ acquired that company, Revolve said, hey, we're going to support that for a little bit while, and then they very quickly kind of said, okay, we're kind of shutting down the service. But unfortunately, a lot of that is kind of like consumer beware almost, because it's very early technology, right? So it's making sure that consumers understand, what is the risk, right, in adopting technology early on. And the thing is, there are a ton of startups in the space that if you think about all the companies that go out on Indiegogo and Kickstarter, right, where you are paying dollars, $200-300 up front, in hopes that you will get something 6 months, sometimes a year, sometimes 18 months from there, right? Sometimes it just simply doesn't happen. Sometimes little companies do go out of business. So, so I don't know if that directly answers your question, but yeah, it's definitely a conversation that we have with companies to make sure that they have this right balance. And the key thing there is, again, transparency with the consumer and making sure the customer knows up front what to expect. John.
Thank you. Great presentation. So sticking with your theme of adoption, and it's great to go through kind of how apps started the connected market. Moving into voice control, it seems like that was a big catalyst. Do you feel that there's another big control platform on the horizon, such as like augmented reality? And what are your thoughts on what's going to be the next big driver for connected home?
So I'm not going to try to predict the future, but nice try. I do think that for the next 18 to 24 months, voice assistants are probably going to be the big driver, right? And again, people talk about, okay, what is that silver bullet? I wouldn't call it that. What it was is kind of putting kind of that more rocket fuel on a jet engine and kind of providing that accelerator. Because at the core, if your device doesn't have great functionality, doesn't have great stability, connectivity, engagement, at the end of the day, it doesn't matter how good your connectivity is with the voice assistant, you gotta have that kind of, you gotta have kind of a standalone value proposition done right. So I think, voice assistants are going to enable that that boost for a little while, and it's just going to bring in, a ton more consumers into the space that probably otherwise would have been holding off for the next, again, 2 to 3 years.
I want to instigate a little bit there. Best Buy versus Amazon. What do you think? Who will win customer battle? The battle for the customers.
So I think it's a great question. So I think we have two different lines that Amazon is actually a big vendor of Best Buy, right? So I actually had the privilege of bringing Amazon Echo into the circuit, so you can imagine how fun those conversations were, and they were really fun. And the thing is, Best Buy is in this kind of very interesting position where some of our largest vendors are also some of our largest competitors. And so, what we are doing internally is making sure that we're keeping the right balance and keeping that relationship in check, so that again, both companies are benefiting from the relationship, right? We're working with each other willingly, no one is forcing us to work with each other, but that's because we are seeing the benefit of Amazon selling Amazon products, because we know there's consumer demand. And for us, you can speak to my category of smart home. For us, we know there's a lot of demand for those devices, and as the destination for smart home devices, we really wouldn't be too good of a destination if we didn't have one of the hottest devices on the market, right? So for us, it's making sure that keeping that balance. And certainly, Amazon is going to own the customer in one way, and certainly we have a lot of loyal to Best Buy customers that are going to, even though they like Amazon Echo, they're going to choose to buy it at Best Buy. Okay, thank you.